Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Dog Whisperer. I'm your host, Evan Grollman, and I'm going to be with you for the next 5 to 10 minutes. And this video is also being recorded via video, and you can check it out on my YouTube channel, The Blue Dog Whisperer. So, on today's episode, we are going to be discussing a topic which was suggested to be me on Facebook, and it's about how wokeness has ruined or is destroying the Democratic Party. Now, as someone who attends a university, I can say firsthand that I've experienced the so-called wokeness or the speech police or the thought police. Now, it's not as bad on my campus as other campuses, but it's still a problem because it's it used to be that college campuses were uh, places that free speech thrived. I mean, you had the Berkeley protests, and there were a lot of there were protests for free speech, and now all of a sudden, college campuses are becoming the ones to sometimes ban speakers from campus because it's deemed hate speech. And the definition of hate speech, according to these campuses, basically is anyone who doesn't agree with their progressive agenda. That's basically what it's come down to. And you do have a lot of people who defend those policies by saying that it's appropriate and that their tax dollars, not their tax dollars, but their tuition is going towards that. So the students, some of whom act like babies, should have a say as to whether or not a speaker gets to go on campus. But the thing is, if it's a public university, I believe that they have an obligation to host someone on campus, provided that it's not a threat to public safety. And I'm not saying that people have a right to go berserk and start rioting or start assaulting people because someone who is maybe provocative or controversial appears on campus. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the person visiting campus. If they incite violence, that's one thing. But if they are just stating their opinion, I don't care if you have a communist on campus. I don't care if you have a fascist on campus. I don't care if you have a conservative or a liberal, as long as they are exercising the First Amendment rights, that's all that matters. And unfortunately, we have gotten to the point where it's not only in terms of who gets to speak on a college campus, but it's also where the wokeness, the people who possess the wokeness are now correcting how you should say things and what you should say. And that's policing speech, obviously. And that is a problem because I think that we should be able to have discussions about certain things without being told that something that really isn't offensive is actually offensive. There is such a thing as you have a right to offend and be offended. And a lot of the times when you try to have a conversation with some of these woke leftists, and I have had many conversations with them, it is so difficult to do it because you have to tiptoe around their feelings or their rules or their little stupid rules and all that. There is no having a conversation with these people. They police everything you say. If something doesn't sound right, but it makes sense, you will be called out. It's unfortunate, but I think that this is the reason why the Democratic Party has had such a hard time in the last few years with getting people who are not on college campuses or are not college graduates to vote for these candidates. It used to be that the Democratic Party was the party for blue collar individuals, but blue collar individuals don't really care about policing speech. Blue collar individuals don't care about what these progressive professors teach their students about so-called microaggressions. It's malarkey, and I think that we have enough problems in this country that we don't need to be adding on to the conflict by saying that this phrase, this microaggression, is somehow just as bad as poverty. I mean, Democrats need to pick and choose their battles, and this is one that is not worth fighting. We do have a First Amendment in this country. I do not go out of my way to offend people, but I will say this: if I unintentionally offend someone, they have a right to call me out. I'm not denying that, but I'm not going to sacrifice my speech if I deem what I said to be perfectly acceptable. There is such a thing as being overly sensitive. And not only that, but I find that a lot of these woke people are very much hypocrites, because a lot of times, in the case of Ed Markey supporters or even Bernie Sanders supporters, who bullied the supporters of Joe Biden and Joe Kennedy, the more moderate candidates, you will find that these so-called woke progressives will not actually follow or practice what they preach, and they will actually bully those who don't subscribe to all their beliefs or anything like that. So it's not only a question of policing speech, but it's also a question of shaming those and talking down to those who don't necessarily agree with them. And Barack Obama very recently, I think last year in 2019, he actually said that if you are going to that calling people out and shaming people on social media is not activism. Now, I remember there was a time when conservatives did not like anything that President Obama had to say. They painted him as a radical, they painted him as out of touch, they painted him as a socialist. And now, because of the direction that the Democratic Party has gone in, further to the left, now all of a sudden conservatives are actually saying, good for you, President Obama, good for you. So I'm questioning, when did President Obama become someone that the conservatives could rely on in some instances to speak truth? I don't think President Obama is a radical. I like President Obama. But I think that the fact that you have President Obama, who is by no means a moderate, he's not a progressive either, maybe he's a pragmatic progressive, but the fact that you have President Obama, who's becoming a voice of reason for right-wingers now, tells me that the Democratic Party has moved further to the left, and a big part of that is because of this progressive wokeness, which has ruined a lot of our chances in some of these important congressional races, which we happen to lose this year. I do remember, the identity politics, the dividing everyone up and telling people that they need to subscribe to this belief or that belief because of their sex, their religion, their race, their gender, their sexuality. I mean, the identity politics needs to come to an end. There are some people who are just so obsessed with the identity that they don't look past the identity. All they see is color, all they see is religion, all they see is sexuality, all they see is gender identity. And as Bill Maher said in a recent new rule that he did, that's essentially how the KKK used to see people. Now, granted, the KKK did it in very derogatory ways, but obsessing over race and religion and sexuality, I mean, it's ridiculous. That's not what matters to the majority of Americans. And Bill Maher made a very good point when he said that the people were able to let go of Donald Trump because they felt that he was crazy as hell, but they couldn't bring themselves to vote for Democrats in other races. And I'm so thankful that it was not Bernie Sanders who was the nominee for the Democrats this time around, because he represents the elitist wing of the Democratic Party. It's interesting. Progressives like to claim that corporate Democrats, that us blue dogs, that we're corporate Democrats and we represent the elite. So let me ask you progressives a question. If you really care about working people, if you really care about, and I'm not talking about just Bernie supporters, I'm also talking about Elizabeth Warren supporters, because a lot of Elizabeth Warren supporters were very, very, very condescending and pretentious, in my experience. So you claim that we only care about corporate interests. Well, what have you guys been talking about? Elizabeth Warren said that one of the things that Elizabeth Warren stressed on the campaign was that she thought that transgendered federal prison inmates should be able to get sex change operations at the expense of taxpayers. Bernie Sanders said that the Boston bombers should be allowed to vote. Bernie Sanders praised Fidel Castro's communist Cuba because they had a literacy program, which, contrary to what he said, was actually set up so that they could try to indoctrinate the Cuban people even more. So you progressives say that that you're talking about what really matters. But what I hear from you guys is a bunch of nonsense and identity politics, which doesn't resonate with the majority of the people. A good example of a progressive who actually talks about things that matter is Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown. He talks about what's best for working people. He talks about what's best for the United States economy and fairness and all that. But for these progressives to complain that we don't represent the values of the American people, what have you guys been doing? It's amazing that progressives are trying to take credit for Joe Biden's victory when they were not with Joe Biden from day one. In fact, a lot of them were actually campaigning against Joe Biden. So I honestly, in the primary, and then they came on board, and I will give progressives credit, some of them for being team players, but Joe Biden was the main reason Joe Biden got elected. That and Donald Trump. If I just think that it's unfortunate that wokeness has ruined a large population from voting Democrat again. I don't know when we're going to regain their trust. I don't know if we can, but we should not give up. We cannot give up. Because this election was too close even for my comfort. And I think that in order for Democrats to move forward, that there needs to be less wokeness, less identity politics, and more policy discussion that actually matters to the people who are working poor, working class, middle class, even homeless people. No more of this college sociology BS. None of that. It's time for the Democratic Party to focus on things that matter. The thing is that Republicans will often not do what's in the best interest of the working class and the working poor and the middle class, yet they get a lot of support from those people because they market their ideas so much better than the Democrats do, and the Democrats are the ones who are really fighting for these people. But you wouldn't know it because the progressives are getting all this media attention and are sucking up the PR oxygen, and us blue dogs can't get our policy points across. So we got to work on that. We really do. And that's all I have to say.